My mom dropped me off at my grandparents' house when I was 12 and never came back. Now she wants my help. She sold my dead father's house to fund her new family. They say your earliest memories define you, setting the foundation for the house your soul will eventually inhabit. Mine are like looking through smudged glass, fragmented, hazy, but sharp around the edges where it hurts. I remember the smell of antiseptic and the squeak of rubber shoes on linoleum floors, the hospital where my father spent his final days. I remember a wooden box that seemed impossibly large, covered in white flowers that smelled too sweet, like decaying sugar. I remember my mother's hand, gripping mine so tight it hurt during the funeral. I was 5 years old. I didn't understand death. I just understood that the man who used to throw me in the air, the man who smelled like sawdust and peppermint, was gone. And the house was very quiet. For a while, it was just me and my mom, Sarah. We were a team, survivors on a life raft. We ate cereal for dinner and watched cartoons in her bed. She would tell me stories about my father, David Thorne. She told me he was an architect, that he built things to last. She pointed to the walls of our house, a beautiful Victorian with a wraparound porch and intricate crown molding, and said, "Your daddy bought this for us, Elias. He wanted us to be safe here forever. This is his promise to us." I clung to that house. It was the only piece of him I had left. I traced the wood grain on the banister he had sanded himself. I sat in the window seat he had built in the hallway, looking out at the rain, imagining he was just at work and would be home soon. Then, a year later, Greg appeared. At first, Greg was great. He was the fun boyfriend. He brought me Lego sets. He took us to the zoo. He tossed a baseball with me in the backyard, trying to fill a space he didn't quite fit. My mother smiled again when he was around. I wanted her to be happy, so I tried to like him. I tried to ignore the fact that he chewed with his mouth open or that he laughed a little too loud at things that weren't funny. But when the ring went on her finger, the dynamic shifted. It wasn't subtle. It was like a light switch being flipped off. The baseball tossing stopped immediately. The Legos stopped coming. He stopped asking me how my day was. I became background noise in his new life with my mother, a static interference he couldn't quite tune out. I remember the shouting. Their house, the house my father bought, became a war zone. Greg didn't like how loud I chewed. He didn't like my toys in the living room. He didn't like that I looked like my father. One night, I woke up to get a glass of water. I heard them in the kitchen. He stares at me. I heard Greg whisper to my mother, his voice laced with irritation. He has David's eyes. It's creepy, Sarah. It feels like I'm being watched by a ghost in my own house. I can't relax. He's just a boy, Greg, Mom whispered back, but her voice was weak. She didn't sound like the woman who used to tell me stories about Dad. She sounded tired. She sounded like she wanted the problem to go away. And the problem was me. Instead of defending me, my mother found a solution: avoidance. She began the slow process of outsourcing her son. "Elias, honey," she'd say, packing an overnight bag on a Friday afternoon. "Greg and I need some grown-up time this weekend. We need to work on our marriage. Why don't you go stay with Nana and Pop? They miss you." Nana and Pop were my father's parents, Arthur and Rose Thorne. They lived in a quiet, older neighborhood about 30 minutes away, in a house that smelled like baking bread and old books. They always welcomed me with open arms, but I could see the sadness in their eyes every time my mother dropped me off and sped away a little too quickly, her tires chirping on the asphalt. When I was 7, my sister, Lily, was born. That was the beginning of the end of my time in my mother's house. Lily was the ours baby. I was the hers kid. The weekend visits to Nana and Pops became week-long stays. Then, they became the default. "The baby is crying," Mom would say on the phone, her voice frantic. "Greg needs his sleep for work. He has a big presentation. Can you stay with Nana for a few more days? You know how loud you can be in the mornings." I always said yes. What choice did I have? I was 7. I felt guilty for existing, guilty for taking up space, guilty for breathing too loud. There was one incident that stays with me: the family photo incident. I was 8. Mom had hired a professional photographer to come to the house. She bought matching outfits for everyone. "Greg, Mom, and baby Lily were all in cream and beige. She bought me a navy blue shirt. "To make you pop," she said. We stood in the backyard. The photographer, a nice lady named Brenda, was arranging us. "Okay, let's get the whole family," Brenda said. "Mom, Dad, baby, and big brother." Greg shifted his weight. "Actually," he said, clearing his throat, "can we get a few with just the three of us? You know, for the Christmas card? Since Elias, well, he spends so much time at his grandparents', it might be confusing for people." My mother didn't say, "No, he's part of this family." She didn't say, "Don't be ridiculous, Greg." She hesitated. Then she looked at me. "Elias, honey," she said, "why don't you go play on the swing set for a minute? We'll call you back over." I walked to the swing set. I sat there for 20 minutes, watching them smile, watching Greg kiss Mom, watching them tickle Lily. They looked like a magazine cover. A perfect family of three. They never called me back over. The sun started to set, and the photographer packed up. "Oh, Elias," Mom said, looking startled when I walked back to the patio. "I'm so sorry. We lost track of time. We'll get a picture of you next time." There was no next time. That year, the Christmas card was just the three of them. By the time I was 9, I was living a split existence. I had a room at my mother's house, but it felt like a guest room. My clothes were mostly at Nana's. My favorite toys were at Nana's. My real life was with my grandparents. The exclusion became blatant. I remember one summer when I was 9, I was at Nana and Pop's, sitting on the floor watching TV. A commercial for Disney World came on. "Mom and Greg are taking Lily to Disney next week," I said to Nana, casually, not really thinking about it. They show me the Mickey ears they bought her. They have her name embroidered on the back in pink thread. Nana went very still. She was folding laundry, and her hands stopped midair, holding one of my t-shirts. She looked at Pop, who was reading the newspaper in his armchair. Pop lowered the paper. His face was like a thundercloud. "Did they invite you, Elias?" Pop asked, his voice gruff. "No," I said, trying to act like it didn't bother me, focusing hard on the cartoon on the screen so they wouldn't see my eyes water. "Mom said it's a lot of walking, and Lily is small, so it's really more of a little kid trip. She said I'd be bored. Plus, Greg said the tickets were really expensive this year." Nana stood up abruptly and went into the kitchen. I heard pots banging. I heard the distinct sound of her trying to stifle a sob. Pop stood up and walked over to me. He put his large, calloused hand on my shoulder. "You like fishing, Elias?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "I've never been. Greg has a boat, but he says it's too dangerous for kids." Pop snorted. "Dangerous? It's a boat, not a rocket ship." "Well, next week, while they're in Florida, you and I are going up to the lake. We're going to catch the biggest bass in the state, and Nana is going to make us a pie every night. How's that sound?" "It sounds good," I whispered. That week, while my mother, Greg, and Lily were taking pictures with Goofy and posting them on Facebook, pictures I saw on my aunt's computer, Pop took me fishing every single day. He taught me how to bait a hook. He taught me patience. He taught me that silence didn't have to be tense. It could be companionable. Nana taught me how to bake her famous apple pie. They didn't have Disney money, but they spent every second they had making sure I didn't feel forgotten. I learned later that my mother wasn't contributing a dime to my care during those times. Nana and Pop paid for my school clothes. They gave me my allowance. They paid my tuition when I transferred to a private middle school because the public one near Mom's house wasn't convenient for her to drive me to, even though she drove past it to get to her yoga class. Another memory. I was 10. I got sick at school. A high fever, shivering, throwing up. The nurse called my mother. She didn't answer. The nurse told me gently. I left a voicemail. An hour passed. I was lying on the cot, shaking. The nurse called again. She answered. The nurse said, looking uncomfortable. She said she's in the middle of a lunch with Greg's clients and she can't leave. She asked if we could call your grandmother. Nana was there in 20 minutes. She stormed into the nurse's office, wrapped me in a blanket, and carried me to her car. "Does Mom know you picked me up?" I asked weakly. "I don't care if she knows," Nana said, her voice shaking with rage. "You're coming home with me." They were my parents in every way except biology. The final severance happened when I was 12. It was a Sunday night in late October. The leaves were turning brown and the air was getting cold. Usually, this was when Mom picked me up to go back for the school week. A car pulled into the driveway. It was Mom's sedan. She was alone. She didn't come to the door. She just honked. I walked out with my backpack, ready for school. But when I got to the car, she popped the trunk. Inside were 3 large suitcases. My suitcases. And 2 cardboard boxes filled with my books and trophies. My stomach dropped. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the weather. I looked at her through the window. She wouldn't look at me. She was staring straight ahead, her jaw set tight. "Get in, honey," she said. I got in the passenger seat. The car smelled like Lily's baby wipes and Greg's cheap cologne, a scent that always made me feel nauseous. "Greg and I had a long talk," she started, her voice rehearsed. She was gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. "With the baby getting older, she needs her own room. She's outgrowing the nursery. And with Greg's new job hours and the tension in the house, we just think it's better for everyone if you stay with Nana and Pop for a while. A longer while." "How long?" I whispered. "Just until things settle down," she lied. "It's better for you. It's quieter there. You can focus on school. Nana loves having you. It's a win-win." A win-win. She won her freedom. I won abandonment. "What about my room?" I asked. "My room with the window seat Dad built." "We're going to paint it pink for Lily," she said. "She loves pink." She didn't look at me the entire ride. She drove me back up the driveway to my grandparents' house, a drive of less than 10 minutes, because she hadn't even taken me to her house first. She had packed my life without me even being there. She didn't even turn off the engine. She popped the trunk and helped me pull the suitcases onto the porch. "Be good, Elias," she said. She gave me a quick, one-armed hug, like she was hugging a distant cousin she didn't really like. "I'll call you." She got back in the car and drove away. She didn't look back. I watched her taillights disappear down the street, red eyes blinking in the darkness. I stood on the porch, 12 years old, surrounded by my life packed into 3 bags. I realized, with a clarity that shattered my heart, that I didn't have a mother anymore. I had a woman who gave birth to me, but she had chosen her new family. She had chosen Greg. She had chosen Lily. And there was no room for the ghost of her first husband's son. The front door opened behind me. Nana stood there. She didn't look surprised. She looked furious and devastated all at once. She didn't ask why I was back. She knew. She had probably known this day was coming long before I did. She didn't say anything. She just pulled me inside and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Later that night, I was sitting on the edge of the bed in the spare room that was now permanently mine. I was crying. Not loud, sobbing crying. Just silent, hot tears leaking out of my eyes and dripping onto my pajama pants. I felt discarded. I felt like trash. Nana came in to bring me a glass of warm milk with nutmeg, just the way I liked it. She saw me. She set the milk down on the nightstand and sat next to me. She didn't tell me it would be okay. She didn't make excuses for my mother. She didn't tell me that Mommy loves you in her own way. Nana was too honest for that. She put a hand on my knee. Her hand was warm and rough with age. "Elias," she said, her voice firm, "I want you to do something for me. I want you to remember this feeling right now. Catalog it. Burn it into your memory." I looked up at her, confused through my tears. "Remember this day," she said. "And when you grow up and you're a man and people come asking you for things, I want you to remember who was sitting on this bed with you when you were 12 years old and your heart was broken. And I want you to remember who wasn't." "Okay, Nana," I whispered. "Remember who was there," she repeated. "That's all that matters in this life. Blood is just biology. Loyalty is love." I took her advice. I remembered. I lived with Nana and Pop until I went to college. They were my rock. Pop taught me how to shave because Greg never did. He stood beside me in the bathroom mirror, guiding my hand with a razor, patient and kind. Pop taught me how to tie a tie. Pop taught me how to drive a stick shift in his old Ford truck, laughing when I stalled it in the grocery store parking lot. Nana taught me how to budget. She showed me her ledger, explaining how she saved pennies to make dollars. Nana taught me how to cook. Nana taught me how to spot a liar. Watch their hands, Elias, she'd say, and watch what they do, not what they say. My mother became a distant relative. I saw her maybe twice a year, usually around Christmas, for an awkward hour where she would talk about how well Lily was doing in dance class and Greg would ignore me, watching football. She would send a card on my birthday with a $20 bill in it. She would text me happy birthday 3 days late. I remember my high school graduation. I was salutatorian. Nana and Pop were in the front row. Pop wore his best suit, the one he wore to church. Nana wore a new hat. My mother came. She stood in the back. She didn't sit with them. She told me later she had to leave early because Greg had a headache. She didn't hear my speech. She didn't see me walk. I went to college on a scholarship, and a small savings bond Pop had matured for me. I studied architecture. Maybe it was subconscious, trying to be like the father I barely remembered. I wanted to build houses that felt like homes, not war zones. I wanted to build foundations that didn't crack. I graduated at the top of my class. I got a job at a prestigious firm in the city. I moved into my own apartment, a loft with exposed brick walls. I was building a life. A few years ago, Pop passed away. It crushed me. I took a month off work to stay with Nana and help her sort through 50 years of memories. My mother came to the funeral. She cried loudly, performing grief for a man she hadn't respected enough to raise his grandson. She sat in the front row, wearing a designer black dress, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. She left right after the service because Greg didn't like driving in the dark and Lily had a recital. Then, last year, the news came through the grapevine. Greg got sick, aggressive stomach cancer. He didn't last long, 6 months. I didn't go to the funeral. I sent flowers to my mother out of basic obligation, signed Elias. I didn't write a note. What would I say? Sorry for your loss of the man who replaced me. I knew what was coming next. I knew it like I knew the wiring of a building. My mother was alone. Lily was in college, living her own life, apparently as selfish as her parents, because she rarely visited. And then I found out the worst part. My aunt, my father's sister, called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Elias, she said, her voice tight, you need to know something. It's about the house. Which house? I asked, looking up from my blueprints. Your father's house. The Victorian. The one David bought. My blood ran cold. That house was supposed to be my father's legacy. He had bought it before he died, hoping to pass it down. It was the only place I remembered him being alive. It was the only place where I had truly been a son. What about it? I asked. She sold it, my aunt said. About 4 months ago, right when Greg's treatments got expensive. She sold it way under market value for a quick cash sale. She didn't even list it properly. She just dumped it to an investor. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I got in my car. I drove out to the old neighborhood. I hadn't been there in years. I pulled up to the curb. There was a dumpster in the driveway. A construction crew was tearing out the porch my father built. They were painting the beautiful brick a trendy, soulless gray. I watched them destroy my father's work. I realized then that she hadn't just sold a house. She had liquidated my father's memory. She took the roof he built for his son and turned it into chemotherapy for her new husband. She burned his legacy to keep her replacement alive for a few more months. I sat in my car and cried for the first time since I was 12. Yesterday, my phone rang. It was my mother. Elias. Her voice was weak, trembling. Hello, Sarah, I said. I hadn't called her mom in years. Oh, Elias, it's terrible, she started crying. Greg is gone, and I have nothing. The medical bills, the debts, they took everything. The life insurance was barely enough for the funeral. I am drowning. I said nothing. I just listened to the sound of her panic. I'm going to lose the apartment I'm renting, she sobbed. Lily can't help. She's just a student. She said she has exams and can't deal with my drama right now. Can you believe that? Her own mother. I could believe it. Lily learned from the best. I have nowhere to go, Elias. I'm alone. She paused, waiting for me to fill the silence with an offer. Why didn't, she asked. I was hoping. I know you're doing well. I saw on LinkedIn that you made partner at your firm. That's wonderful, honey. I was hoping maybe you could help me. Just for a little while. Until I get on my feet. Maybe I could stay in your guest room? I won't be a bother. I can cook. The guest room. The irony was almost funny. She wanted the guest room in my house after keeping me in the guest room of her heart for 20 years. I closed my eyes. I was 12 years old again, sitting on the edge of a bed in my grandparents' spare room, tears leaking down my face. I smelled the warm milk and nutmeg. I felt Nana's hand on my knee. Remember who was there? No, Sarah, I said. My voice was calm, steady. What? She gasped. But I'm your mother. Are you? I asked. Because my mother wouldn't have dropped me off on a porch like a sack of unwanted clothes when I was 12. My mother wouldn't have gone to Disney World without me. My mother wouldn't have let her new husband treat me like a nuisance in my own home. I was in a difficult position, she pleaded. Greg was complicated. I was trying to make it work. I was young. I was trying to save my marriage. You save your marriage by sacrificing your son, I said. You made it work for you. You made it work for Greg. You made it work for Lily. You didn't make it work for me. You outsourced me. You gave me to Nana and Pop because I was inconvenient. You treated me like a broken appliance you didn't want to fix, so you put me in storage. They loved you, she cried. It was a good home. They did, I agreed. They loved me enough to raise me when you wouldn't. They paid for my food. They paid for my school. They taught me how to be a man. You didn't do any of that. You just gave birth to me. I'm destitute, Elias. I sold everything. I know, I said, my voice hardening. You sold my father's house. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. You sold the house my father bought for us, I said. You took the only physical thing he left behind, and you cashed it in to extend the life of the man who replaced him. You spent my father's legacy on his replacement. You didn't call me to ask if I wanted to buy it. You didn't offer me a dime of the equity. You just burned it. We were desperate. Greg was dying. And now you're desperate again, I said. But I'm not the bank of last resort for the people who abandoned me. Elias, please. I have nobody. I'm sleeping on a friend's couch. I have no retirement. I put it all into Greg's care. You made your investment, I said. You invested everything in Greg and Lily. You invested nothing in me. Now the account is empty. You can't do this, she whispered. I'm your blood. Blood is just biology, I said, quoting Nana. Loyalty is love, and you were never loyal to me. I'll have to go to a shelter. Then I guess you'll have to figure it out, I said. Just like I had to figure out how to be a man without a father or a mother. Don't do this, she screamed. I am sorry. I'm sorry for everything. It's too late, I said. The spare room is closed. I hung up the phone. I blocked the number. I don't know where she's going to go. I suppose she'll have to figure it out. I sat down on my couch. I looked at a framed photo on my mantelpiece. It's a picture of me, Nana, and Pop at my college graduation. The three of us are smiling, really smiling. Pop has his hand on my shoulder. Nana is holding my diploma. They were there, and that's all I need to remember. Have you ever had to cut ties with a parent who only wanted you when they needed something? Do you think Elias was justified in turning his mother away after she sold his father's house? If you believe that family is about who shows up, not just who shares your DNA, hit that like button and subscribe. #parental abandonment.